this important bill, Mr. President, for an act to repeal the Nigerian Police Act, Cap P9, Laws of the Federation 2004, to enact the Nigerian Police Act 2019. This bill was read for the first time in this hallowed chamber on Wednesday, 20th day of November 2019. Mr. President, this bill seeks to primarily provide for the framework for the police service and ensure cooperation and partnership between the Nigerian police and communities in the maintaining peace and combating crimes and sundry acts of insecurity in Nigeria. There are current challenges and deficiencies in the structure, appointment, promotion, discipline, posting, training, kitting, weaponry, living condition, pension and retirement benefits. Indeed, the general welfare of our dear gallant officers within the Nigerian police force have persisted, largely because of the draconian and outdated statutes that guided policing in Nigeria. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, the present Police Act, is not only fraught with deficiencies, but strongly the major organization duties and powers of the Nigerian police force as encapsulated in the present Act have largely remained as set out in the 1943 Police Act. It is the recognition of the inherent shortcoming in the extant Police Act and the seemingly intractable challenges of insecurity in our country that has necessitated the proposed repeal for this extant Act and the enactment of the new one in its place in consonance with the dictate of international best practice and realities of present-day Nigeria. Mr. President, the security of life and property of citizens and residents remain one of the primary purposes of government everywhere. The 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended in Section 14, subsection 2, paragraph B, indeed states that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. Yet, the spread of insecurity and criminality in Nigeria has remained not only alarming, but unrelenting violent crimes, such as terrorism, kidnapping, armed robbery and banditry, suicide bombing, ethno-religious killing, suicide, election violence, and other forms of nefarious activities have characterized daily living in Nigeria. The negative impact of this sad security situation on the economy and general socio-political development of Nigeria as well documented. The 2019 edition of the Global Peace Index, which is described as the world leading measures of global peacefulness, placed Nigeria among the first least peaceful countries in sub-Saharan region, including Democratic Republic of Congo as number 55, Central African Republic as number 57, Somalia 158, South Sudan 161. The Global Position Index report ranked Nigeria number 148 among 163 independent states and territories according to their level of peacefulness. Nigeria does retain this 148 spot for the second year in a row, having attained the same unenviable position in 2018. You may wish to recall, Mr. President, my dear colleagues, that there was an attempt in the 8th Assembly to repeal the Extant Act, Police Act, and to enact the new Nigerian Police Act, but regrettably, that effort could not be consumed before the expiration of the Assembly. Part 1 of the new bill captured its general specific objectives of the bill, which summarily is to provide for a more efficient and effective police service that is based on the principle of accountability and transparency, as well as the protection of human rights and fundamental freedom. The extant Nigerian Police Act has neither general nor any specific objective. In view of the concern about adherence to the human rights norms by the police, the clause making the Nigerian duty bound to promote and protect the fundamental right of persons in police custody as guaranteed by the Constitution was inserted in this bill. Another deviation from the extant Police Act is is the amendment proposed in respect to the appointment of and removal of the Inspector General of Police. This amendment was the one that became contentious, especially in the view of the 8th House of Representatives. Another amendment has to do with the tenure of office of the IGP. A 5-year was recommended for each IGP to address the challenges of the non-committal of the IGP to effect meaningful changes due to the usual short tenure of most IGPs. For instance, since 1999, there have been 10 IGPs, including the present one. This is an average of 2 years per IGP. Provision relating to the removal of the serving IGP are so crucial that they have also been inserted in this new bill. Additionally, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, in response to the lacuna in the present law on the functions of the IGP, a clause is inserted in this new bill to clearly state the limit of the powers and functions of the IGP and thus improve accountability. The new bill has equally proposed to increase the number of persons that have a say in assignment of commissioners of police to different states of the Federation, to include the state governors and the Minister of the FCT. It's stipulated in the Police Service Commission as the appointing authority. It is also provided for commissioners of police to be appointed to head departments and operational units. Mr. President and respected colleagues, the bill also provides for the establishment of community police forum and vote for by the commissioners of police of each state that shall consist of representatives of the police force and the local community in the states. This clearly is a paradigm shift from the traditional police system to a community participatory system of policing, uniting ordinary citizens in their respective communities with the police in the prevention of and detection and resolving crimes. In order to address the prevailing issues of gender discrimination by the police, a clause prohibiting discrimination on the basis of gender in Nigeria Police Force and by the force has been deliberately inserted in the new bill. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Nigeria generally applauds the National Assembly within the passage of the Police Trust Fund Bill, which recently received the assent of His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federation. The reality is that except there is a concomitant amendment to the Extant Act of the Nigeria Police Force, the new Police Trust Fund Act, as important as it is, may not achieve the level of effectiveness and outcome desired. In all, this bill deserves an urgent attention as it leverages the existing legal gaps in the Extant Nigerian Police Act, which has resulted in administrative bottleneck and the general poor policing and heightened insecurity across Nigeria. Interestingly, there is no extra cost implication with regard to the bill. I sincerely thank you for listening to me and for your anticipated support. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished.
The President, I rise to support this very important bill. Indeed, while the sponsor was going through the lead debate, some of us were worried about some of the things that we did in the last Senate. Wanted to be saw if the bill that was sponsored by, was it Abu Ibrahim, the chairman of the committee, if truly it was assented to. So, but I thank God the sponsor of the bill referred to it. That means it wasn't assented to. Mr. President, here we are again about the police force. And when you talk about the police force, and then you tie it to the constitutional provision of Section 14(2)(b). Section 14(2)(b) is all about the police force. And that is the primary responsibility of government is the protection of lives and properties. That's what Section 14.2b is talking about. And the only agency that is clearly there to do that work for us is the Nigerian police force. Whatever the military is doing is complementary. It's the police force. And therefore, when the sponsor of this debate talked about this bill deserves very urgent attention, that it speaks volumes about what is before us. What is before us is a very serious matter. There is serious insecurity in the country, and therefore, that primary responsibility of government is being questioned, called to question. So, this bill is very important. Very, very important, Mr. President. And again, we are talking about state police, or of community police. So this bill, in my humble view, has captured everything about community policing. But this bill must be subjected to very serious public hearing. This bill must be very, very holistic. Because everything about what we have been talking about is all in this bill. It's about this bill. And the only area that I didn't see is the funding. Funding is key. Mr. President, my respected colleagues, the Nigerian police force is being populated by young men and women. Just like the Nigerian Army, Nigerian Navy, and Nigerian Air Force. Whatever the military can do, the police force can equally do. What is lacking in the police force is because certain things are not done. The type of training, the type of funding is lacking. That is why the police force cannot equal the Nigerian Army in terms of ability to withstand some of these criminals. And therefore, they are all Nigerians. So the funding is key. And I recall, Mr. President, my respected colleagues, that in the last Senate, there was a separate bill for the funding of the police force. So, Mr. President, my respected colleagues, without funding, adequate funding, whatever this bill is out to achieve, will come to nothing. Will come to nothing. So, for the public hearing, Mr. Chairman of this committee, it is important for you to carry along with the proper funding of the Nigerian police force, which is lacking in this bill. So, Mr. President, I support this bill. The bill is very, very comprehensive. It's even talking about gender equality, but that is also captured in the Nigerian Constitution. So, we don't even need it here. We don't need it here because the ground norm of the country has said it all, that there must be no gender discrimination. And therefore, you don't need to put it in another separate bill. Whatever that is happening in the police force, curiously, Mr. President, the Nigerian police force is here to produce a female IGP. In all these, how many years of independence, since 1960, we have not been able to produce a female IGP. And therefore, it is something that is worth talking about, but it is something that is internal, not about law, because already the ground norm of the country says it all, that there must be no discrimination on the basis of color or gender. Mr. President, I support this bill. This bill must be given the deserved attention by this Senate, by the entire country, because in this bill, we will be able to solve some of these insecurity problems that we have in this country. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity.
Senator Sirajuddin.
And speak in favor of the bill being proposed by my distinguished colleague, Senator Jika. I would say that this bill is very apposite, coming as it were at this particular point in time. And we will see that almost every day that we have sat in this Alo chamber in the past 7 or 8 months have been about talking about security. And of course, the usual refrain will be, who will bail the cats? Fortunately, the instrumentality of bailing the cats in coming up with appropriate legislative intervention is embedded in the National Assembly. So I would say that coming up with this bill on the reform of the Nigerian Police Act is up. And this is not just being said as a general statement. There are certain salient reforms which I think are very important that have been brought forward under the bill. First and foremost is the recognition that the Nigerian police should have a different focus from what it was established to do during the colonial era, which is to preserve the colonial hegemony on the country. So therefore, provisions of section 1, 2, and 4 of the bill clearly set out the objectives, both general and specific, and more fundamentally is the recognition on the need for the Nigerian police to promote human rights and dignity of the Nigerian people in the context of enforcement of laws to protect life and property of Nigerians. Then secondly, I think the emphasis on specific role and responsibility of the Nigerian Police Council will also create a situation whereby the Nigerian police will not just be seen as an appendage of the federal executive, but as a Nigerian police in the real sense. And tied to this is also the recognition of need to have a specific tenure and the mode of removal of the Inspector General of Police. As it were today, it's as if the Inspector General of Police and some other people on the hierarchy of the Nigerian police, they hold the office at the pleasure of the president or the executive. But from the provision, there are clear provisions on how an IGP will emerge, which appears to even be a competitive process, open to recommendations and advice of the Nigerian Police Council. Then in terms of tenure, the IGP will no longer be removed at the pleasure or upon change of government. There are certain specific grants, for instance, issue of misconduct, non-compliance with the provision of the Constitution, and manifest, and I like the word manifest incapability to be able to carry his duties. This is a very important aspect and innovation that will ensure that the IGP is not committed to any other thing but to the upholding of the Constitution of Nigeria, its laws, and protection of life and property. Then, of course, there are now clear provisions on the functions of the IGP, which will enhance our policing. Then, particularly Section 13 that talks about delegation of power. We believe if the Inspector General of Police adequately used power to delegate appropriately, it will resolve the problem of monstrosity of a huge country with a single and unified police command. But be that as it may, it should be mentioned, possibly the promoter of the bill may look at possibility of also having specific role for the Assistant Inspector General of Police. I look at the bill, there's no provision on specific duty and responsibility for the AIG, while it provided for the Deputy Inspector General of Police. What is seen in practice today is that all the 36 commissioners of police, including that of the FCT, report directly to one man, to the IG. I think this is unwieldy, and this will not allow for proper supervision on the zonal basis, and even in terms of being able to adequately and promptly respond to whatever emergencies that may arise. Then, of course, it is also important to consider the issue of element of community policing. Whereas under the present system, you have an informal voluntary system of police-community relations. There are clear provisions in the bill that provide basically for a police community forum and board to be able to actively prescribe responsibility and role for community engagement to be able to do so. And it is hoped that the bill now providing additional statutory responsibility for the governors will also encourage them to take active part in strengthening policing in their state, and then possibly address some of the perennial challenges of whether the governors are actually performing any role as chief security officer. I would say that this is a well thought out legislation, and I fully support it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator is to bring to the attention of the Senate that I was actually the one who sponsored this bill in the 8th Senate. And the reason then was that there were a lot of agitations relating to state police and all the arguments left and right. And we felt that if we come out with a structure that can work for all times, it should be enough to assuage the fears of Nigerians. The British Embassy was represented in the technical session that led to the establishment framing of this bill. And they were all happy because they saw the structure as adequate enough to assuage the fears of all well-meaning Nigerians and to clearly clip the agitations for state police. The only issue that arose had to do, in fact, the police itself, that's why they are still insisting the police chairman must bring it back. They wanted it desperately. There was public hearing, an elaborate one. The only issue was there was some form of misinformation that relates to the appointment of the Inspector General of Police, and then, how do I put it? His tenure, and then the way he can be removed. Those were the only issues. And there were clearly no issues, because when that provision was framed, I specifically, and I'm happy Basiru has raised the use of that word, manifest. It was deliberate. The idea was, if you are doing a law, don't take advantage of the fact that you have a sitting president that is good. You must equally anticipate a situation where, in the event that you have one bad one, God forbid, that you have enough institutional safeguard to bring him in line with the wishes and aspirations of Nigerians. That was the only reason. And unfortunately, nobody can explain how that has not been. But I'm telling you that the police itself needs it, and I'm absolutely sure that with this structure put into use and the funding that we already have invested, that if the police fund, what do you call it? Bill, were to pass concurrently, it will have served as a support to establish this structure. And happily enough, that was accepted. But unfortunately, this was jettisoned for reasons that are not too clear. I'm happy that my brother and friend Jika, I'm sure under pressure from the police, has decided to introduce this bill. This bill must work. And if it works, I am absolutely sure, Mr. President, this country will benefit from the operation of this structure. We have just finished a motion that talks about involvement of security in the management of our parks. It is unusual, sir, that we say we have ungoverned spaces. That expression sounds rhapsodic. Rhapsodic in the sense that our constitution has clearly delineated, defined jurisdictionally the function of every tier of government. Federal government knows what it belongs to it in this country. State government knows what belongs to it in terms of, and so it is with the local government. And the whole idea behind the frameworks of our constitution is that in taking government nearer to the people, there are certain responsibilities that the federal government is incapable of performing well. And therefore, they were devolved to this tier of government in such a manner that the entire country will be secured. Unfortunately, people will come, take office, swear to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution, but on assumption of office will sit on the same Constitution. And therefore, it makes the working almost unworkable. So I think that this Senate should assist this country by fast-tracking the passing of this bill, and then ensuring that it is signed into law, and then ensuring a connect between the funding and then the servicing of this structure as envisioned by this law, so that Nigerians can benefit from a better security. Once again, I urge my colleagues to support this bill. It's a very, very important bill, and I thank my brother and friend for sponsoring the bill before this Senate. Thank you.
Senator, sir.
Indeed, family members can actually collaborate in your kidnap and robbery. It is high time this get changed immediately. And I think it's apt, and I support this bill. And most importantly, in the last part of this bill, the chairman for police, in his words, said, interestingly,
there is no extra cost implication with regard to the bill. No cost implication. Chairman, Police. I don't think we have anything to debate. I think we should pass the bill, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Sumatadin.
That this bill is an effort towards addressing the challenges that is facing our nation today. Effective policing, Mr. President, must be community-based, and it must be a police system that appreciates the rights of the people. What we have as present, Mr. President, was what was put in place by the colonial masters and, of course, inherited by the military government. In those days, Mr. President, some years back, I think it's gradually changing. Police can arrest anybody for wandering. If you move from your house to your neighbor, you could be arrested. In the north, they will tell you, kana yawo banza. You know, you're only in Ranu. And once you are arrested, you are locked up. These laws are still existing, Mr. President. So, attempt to change these laws, I think, is good for our nation. But I must say, Mr. President, perhaps when we proceed to the public hearing of this bill, we'll be able to get the details of some of the challenges that probably this bill has not really addressed. For instance, Mr. President, for a policeman to be effective, it will be better to post him within the area where he appreciates the norms and values of the people. And I could see that effort was being made in the first 2-3 paragraphs of this bill to emphasize the need to involve the state government and other stakeholders as to those who will administer security at that level. So, Mr. President, this bill equally is going to address the challenges of community policing that we are talking about. I'm not saying community policing is bad, but if we can get this right, I'm very sure that those who are agitating for even the state police may not want to do that. Because, Mr. President, the IG came here and gave us a brief. If you have people who work for the police and you are asking them to work for charity, I'm sure nobody in this country will want to do that again for so many reasons. So I think effort must be made to ensure that this bill is passed, and in the course of the public hearing, we'll be able to see some of the challenges. My colleague talked about the well-being of Nigerian police. Of course, Mr. President, for police to be able to perform effectively, their well-being must be catered for. I recall in the 7th and 6th Senate, we discussed issues relating to the well-being of Nigerian police. A system whereby a policeman is dropped at the checkpoint, nobody cares as to how he gets home, and you accuse the policeman of collecting bribe. How is he going to get home? There are so many things confronting the police. The well-being of the Nigerian police itself is a major problem. It's a major problem confronting the effectiveness of Nigerian police. So we must look at this bill at the public hearing and see if we can inculcate into it those areas that nobody has really talked about. The take-home of the Nigerian police is equally very important.
You can round up.
Army was not too comfortable as at the kind of equipment that was provided for the Nigerian police. And I think we can still go back to it, so that the army can face the task of maintaining the territorial integrity and safety of Nigerian people. The Nigerian police should be equipped in such a manner that they can carry out those functions that today is being carried out by the Nigerian army. I so submit, Mr. President.
Senator Ibrahim.
Be comprehensive. And I'm definitely sure if we do justice to this bill, if we are able to pass it and come up with an act, certainly there is not going to be any problem, because the main function of police is actually to look at the internal security of any country. And everywhere you go in this world, you will see that police is actually responsible for the peace and the internal security of that country. And therefore, it is our own responsibility to make sure that this bill actually passes through the second reading. And I therefore support this bill. I pray that everybody should rally around this bill to give it speedy passage. I support the bill.
Senator
Mr. President, I stand to throw my weight behind this bill. I support it in its entirety because it's very, very important. Not only important, but necessary. Necessary in the sense that we need to modernize the legislation guiding the function of the Nigerian police force, so as to get it rejigged to be able to perform its functions properly. President, there have been proponents of village police force or local government police and sometimes state police. And I always say that this is not what is important. The important thing is to put Nigerian police force in the best form so as it will be able to perform its function. But because the way it is now is lacking in several things. Legislation, lack of funding, in fact, lack of everything. I believe that once we modernize the law and we move forward to properly address the problems facing the Nigerian police force, then we'll be able to have a situation where the policing system in this country will be very much okay. Because worldwide, the business of policing in society does not rest on the shoulders of the police force in that area. It's something that involves everybody. And that is what this amendment is part of what this amendment is trying to address, community policing. The IGP was here, he explained the concept, and it has been tried. We are trying it in Kano, it's working in Kano. Over the years we've been doing that. That's why the crime rate in Kano is very, very low. We do not have bandits in Kano. Even the kidnappers, when they commit the atrocities in other areas and run to Kano, we get them apprehended. Why? Because we have this system where everybody is involved in the policing of the state. We are able to garner intelligence. Once somebody comes into our society, we know that a new person, a stranger has come in, and then we try to interrogate that person. What are you here for? So, sir, it's very, very important. What is before us, and what we need to do, is to strengthen the Nigerian police. Let's all be involved. And even, high-worth individuals in our society can come into this arrangement. Give money to the police, give equipment to the police. Exactly what we have done in Kano. Governor was able to buy 500 million worth of tracking system to help the police force. So anybody, if a criminal, if a kidnapper did anything outside Kano, run to Kano, we have tracking system to get that person and get him arrested. Even the uncle of the magazine Garin Daura that was kidnapped in Daura, and when they ran to Kano, we got them arrested through that tracking system. So there are several. Even the other guy in Taraba, who was a kidnapping kidpin, was also arrested in Kano. He ran to Kano and thought he was safe. But we got him arrested through this tracking system. So it's something that is all encompassing. Everybody should be part of it. And this is part of what this bill is seeking to do. So I support it, and I urge all my colleagues to support this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Bikule Amoso.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bikule Amoso, I represent Ogun Central. Let me join my colleagues in commending Senator Haliru Jika for bringing up this bill. Mr. President, I'll be very brief. I feel very inclined to support this bill for some reasons. Of course, this bill talks about the general welfare of the men and officers of the Nigerian police force. There's nothing that can be achieved. First, we all agree in an atmosphere of insecurity. We just discussed that this morning. And if we are going to get the best from all these our men and officers of not just the police, all these our security agencies, of course, they must be comfortable. Their welfare must be well taken care of. Once this is done, then we'll be in a position to challenge them if they are not working well, or if they are found lacking in any of their responsibilities. Mr. President, again, this bill talks about which is good music in my ears, and I'm sure in the ears of several of our colleagues here, and that is involvement of state governors in the appointment of Commissioner for Police. I think this will all go well. for complementary role between the government and federal and those in the respective states. Truth is, Mr. President, there is no state. Indeed, if you see, ask any police command in Nigeria, all the state police command, you will see that most of their operation are being supported, are being shouldered by the respective states in which they serve. So it will be what I call the right thing to do if the governors are involved in the appointment of the Commissioner for Police. I think we should look into the relationship between the IGP and the Police Service Commission. As we speak today, I think we are in court. I don't know, maybe this bill will address some, and maybe we can look at the bill setting up Police Service Commission as well. When we get to public hearing, all of these gray areas will be looked into. One, again, that thrills me is this bill talking about community policing. Of course, there are some gaps and there are some gray areas that we need to fine-tune. And I'm sure when it gets to public hearing, we'll get divergent opinions and views, and I'm sure that we will come up with something that will be acceptable to all Nigerians. Another thing that is talked about is police trust fund. They need money to do this. Without the necessary funding, of course, they will not do well. I'm aware that this has even been the last time I was in the Senate, in 2003 to 2007, we talked about this police trust fund. And I think we asked was it the IG that we asked? And up to today, of course, it's not been effected. So I know that this bill talked about looking into this and making sure that we do carry out the necessary amendments such that this police trust fund will commence and it will be to the benefit of all of us. Because once we are secured, Nigeria will develop. As always said, nothing good can happen in an atmosphere of insecurity. We talked about that almost on a daily basis. You open our papers. In fact, we are in the pages of front pages of newspaper for wrong reasons. Check papers today, probably will check tomorrow, check yesterday. Every day we talk about insecurity. So nothing will be too much for us to do to ensure that our country is secured, our country is safe, and our people is safe. So, Mr. President, I join my colleagues in supporting this bill, and I pray that this bill will quickly be passed so that it can go for public hearing and consequently it will come back here for passage. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Francis.
Representing Adamawa North. This bill is coming at a very right time. I remember last week the Senate deliberated extensively about overhauling the security architecture of this country. And in the wisdom of the President of the Senate, he went ahead to inaugurate a committee to look into this. Mr. President, we all know that the Nigerian police is the lead agency in maintaining internal security. Any other agency will only be supporting the police, but police take the front lead. I listened to Senator Jika last week on Channels Television. It was a very nice analogy. South Africa has 50 million people. So yet they have 1.9 million policemen policing 50 million people. Nigeria, over 200 million people, 300,000 policemen, and you want security. How will you get it? If you look at the funding of the police, it's nothing to come about. Few days ago, we brought the IGP here, and he told us here that they are doing operation somewhere. The next day, it was on the front page of newspapers. They attacked terrorists in Kaduna, and it was successful. and the helicopter was shot at by with an AA rifle. Today, the Nigerian police are still bearing AK-47 rifle, and Boko Haram are using GPMG, gun-mounted GPMG. Mr. President, I am supporting this bill holistically. We should consider also, sir, establishing a police college in each, or police training school in each police command, so that we can recruit as many men as possible into the Nigerian police. If they need special training, they should take them to those premier police colleges. But we need enough manpower now in this country. When the time comes, I had my own bill on this issue, but at least I will allow my own to be swallowed into its own bill. I am taking my own bill so that we can conquer. For conquerors, internal conquerors now, not the other side. I am supporting this bill so that we can have an active police to police this country. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Last but not the least, Senator Rochas Okorocha. Very rigorous recruitment of soldiers because the situation demanded that. I think we are in a similar situation. And it is only fair for us as leaders of this country to take this challenge. This bill should consider the restructuring of the command and structure of the Nigeria police. The present structure is not working. Funding the trust fund, the police trust fund is already accruing some money. The last count I was told there was about 52 billion naira or so. But it's not about throwing money to the police. You need to adjust the structure. Otherwise, that money will just be a sinking fund. So we should be in a hurry to recruit, to train and retrain. Equipping the training, police training institutions is supposed to be one vital aspect of getting our security arrangements right. And this is something that we have to do in a hurry, even if it means going for supplementary budget. So be it. The kind of situation we are, the lives that are lost on a daily basis is something that we cannot tolerate, and in fact, we should be on the right side of history. With this, let me put the question. Those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, the bill for an act to repeal the Police Act, CAP Bill 2020, to provide for the framework for the police service and ensure cooperation and partnership between the police and communities in maintaining peace and combating crime and for related matters 2020, second reading.
A bill for an act to repeal the Police Act CAP P19 laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004 and enact the Nigeria Police Bill 2020 to provide for the framework for the police service and ensure cooperation and partnership between the police and the communities in maintaining peace and combating crime and for related matters 2020 second reading taken. The bill is referred to the Senate Committee on Police Affairs to report back within 4 weeks. Thank you very much. Leader of the Senate.